Speak to us about this, if you will. Is it true that the federal government of Nigeria paid $40 million to an Israeli company to monitor, for internet surveillance, to monitor private citizens, especially journalists?
I am not fully familiar. I don't have all the facts on the table before me. But let me say that most countries of the world, whether it's America, whether it is Britain, whether it is China, or whichever country, of course they monitor internet. There is no country in the world where communications are not monitored. None. Go to US, go to Canada, go to Britain. They monitor. There is no country that does not monitor because there are sometimes issues of security involved, particularly in a country like Nigeria, where we are having challenges of terror. For example, where terror uses technology to destroy lives. So in many countries it is done. Maybe they don't talk about it. But our democracy is new. But I do know that there is no country in the world that does not monitor the internet. That does not mean assault or abuse on the rights of citizens, because those citizens still have their own right under the law to sue if their rights are violated. This is the situation. So, as I said, there's a lot of politics, and I've seen a lot of people saying things for political reasons, not really for the national interest.
Yeah, but you also have people who thought that, the comment was also out there that the contract was supposed to be in hush-hush tones, but it blew open, and so some quarters up there were not happy about that. Is that also true?
Absolutely not true. The reality is that anything that government does can't really be hidden. We're in a democracy. What contract will we award in Nigeria that people will not know? How will it be done? There is no international thing that you will do that will be hidden. What is getting clear is that you have seen a lot of political parties, opposition parties, who don't tolerate contrary opinion, making a lot of statements on this, taking it out of context. I have asked you this question. Is it the US? Is it Britain? Is it Russia? Is it which country in the world that does not monitor communications? People monitor, even internationally. I can tell you that what you are doing, even our networks are monitored by international security organizations. Everybody knows this. We are just making politics out of an issue that is clearly the norm in most countries, whether they are democracies or not. That is the reality of the world we live in. Because there are crimes that are committed using modern communication systems, serious crimes, and most governments in the world try to follow. That doesn't mean violations. Normal citizens that have nothing to fear will not be afraid of anything like that. But I know clearly that under our laws, under our constitution, our privacy cannot be violated without a consequence.
The question will be, usually in other countries, they have frameworks for these things. It's done under a particular framework so that politics does not interfere with national security. Do we have such a framework in Nigeria?
Nigeria has a framework. We have national security laws in place. We have national security agencies and organizations in place. We have the constitution in place. And there is nothing we do in Nigeria today that is not backed up by the law. If it is not so, citizens can challenge it in court. So there is nothing that is going on that is not backed by law. The only thing is that we live in a highly partisan environment where we think we must debate and discuss everything which is good, but we must put them in context. Let me tell you, for example, there are politicians that have registered hundreds of NGOs to file all sorts of reports against Nigeria. We know of them. So the truth is, I think partisan politics is being taken beyond the norm of national interest. As a citizen and as a journalist, I definitely will oppose any violation of privacy. I will oppose it, whether it is done by the Nigerian government or private individuals like we have seen in England, where people, journalists, news organizations, were spying on people's telephones to write stories. So it could come from any source. The reality of the matter is that if a state like Nigeria, no country, no serious country in the world does not monitor communications for the safety of citizens.
Do you think that the fears of the opposition are unfounded?
I can't hear you.
Do you think that the fears of the opposition are unfounded?
The opposition that is raising this thing, you know them very well. They can't even tolerate opposition in their own state. They can't. Judge it. You live in Lagos. You live in all the opposition states. Look at what they talk and what they do in their state. Then you will know exactly that President Goodluck Jonathan today is the most abused president in the world. There are people who set up columns with him to write to insult him on a daily basis. There are cartoons that are devoted to him. And the same opposition cannot tolerate one-third of what the president has tolerated as president of Nigeria. We have seen it in those states. I don't want to go personal. But you know very well that what they are doing is simply bitter politicking. Maybe they think by abusing the president, then they will win the next election. Maybe they think by crying, over everything, they will win the next election. I think Nigerians are not fools. We know those who have a temper to tolerate opposition, to tolerate contrary opinion, who have the patience for due process. In most of these opposition states, if you go there, you know you don't have a voice.
Oh, Mr. Maku, I did not ask what the opposition was doing. I was asking if their fears are unfounded. That is, if this security apparatus that's been purchased will not be used against them.
The fears are political. The fears are completely unfounded, and they are simply for political reasons, grandstanding politics. It has nothing to do with the freedom of Nigerians. Nobody's rights will be violated.
Well, we have a comment from Sultanisa who says, countries that monitor internet admit doing that. Why is Nigeria's case hidden?
I can't hear you now.
Sultanisa says here, he sends us a question for you. He says, countries that monitor internet access admit doing so, but Nigeria's case is hidden.
Monitor. Nobody should know. Everybody knows that globally, the internet is monitored. It's monitored by Americans. It's monitored by the British. It's monitored by the Chinese. It's monitored by the Russians. The internet is monitored because there are issues that relate to public safety that demand that. But that doesn't mean that private privacy is violated. No, because the citizens' rights under the Constitution are clearly stated. And if your rights are violated by the state, you can go to court. By security agencies, you can go to court. Nobody is immune. So I think very honestly that given the circumstances we face in Nigeria and all over the world today, you cannot say that the communications will be left without some level of monitoring.
No, what they say is, why didn't the government inform the country that this was going to happen, rather than for them to hear it the way they did? As well as, why didn't they even sponsor an internet bill such that they go hand in hand?
No. Like I said, there is a lot of hot air, and I've told you, I do not have, what we have seen is more of bitter politicking, and I believe that whatever process goes on, definitely, if the government decides to take any action, the public will know. But it's not as if before you start a process. Along the way, definitely, if government makes those decisions and takes those actions, it will make it known. But there is a process. There is a process.
I think the worry here is that if you say, well, some of these headlines and stories that come from some of the opposition states, are found in the news space, it means, the journalists are being used, isn't it?
Being used by who?
Well, perhaps maybe by those you would want to call the opposition.
No, I wouldn't say that. You're a journalist, I'm a journalist. There are many. I know that overall we have a credible professional corps. People reporting and doing their jobs according to conscience. But you can also not dismiss the fact that in Nigeria today there are many reports that if you read them, you will go home with the opinion that they are not objective. That does not mean that every story in Nigeria is like that. But definitely there is high level of politicization of our stories. Of many of our stories. It's not all over the press, but it's visible. Everybody can see it.
When you say that all opposition states, does that mean that because even the states where the ruling party at the national level is not in charge at the state level, the same thing seems to play out in terms of the media. Is that correct? And if so, why hasn't the government regulation body been able to do much about that?
Because we are all colleagues. You go out and see. And I can tell you very clearly that as far as, you know, the freedom, and even in the private medium, there are many issues that I think we should discuss. And it is wrong to simply focus in one direction. If we are going to get a stable and balanced media, it has to come from both ends, from private sector, from owners, whether they are government or private, from politicians, and from the law enforcement agencies as well as the Constitution. Now, the operations of all these agencies and these factors will determine the kind of media that you have. And I think it's important that we discuss these matters freely as professionals and agree that the journalism profession in Nigeria is in need of nurturing and is in need of professional monitoring and is in need of enforcement of ethics and balance so that